This essay on workings of the stars and earthly substances is only a small part of several years' work in the Biological Institute at the Goetheanum. In it, we have tried to penetrate into the essence of matter, to learn to know the effects of the workings of substances, to set free the cosmic forces embedded in them, and through a spiritual conception, to restore what is earthbound to the universal spirit. The term stars is used here in the ancient sense, referring to all luminous bodies of the heavens, fixed and moving, and in these experiments refer directly to the sun, moon, and planets. It is here dealing with the mystery of matter and opening up a path into a vast domain where wonderful things will be revealed to us if we will but observe impartially the results of our experiments and acknowledge the pictures which nature herself has painted. It is a treatise on science, appealing to the artistic sense in man, which will enable him to approach with a feeling of reverence and awe a work of art depicting the influence of the stars in earthly substances. It was Rudolf Steiner, the founder of anthroposophy, who gave us a new insight into the world of minerals, of plants, and of animals. It was he who showed humanity the way back again from matter to spirit. The following essay is inspired by the teaching that anthroposophy has to give. All the substances around us are subject to the laws of gravity. Are all solid bodies, however, subject only to the earth forces, or are they acted upon by other outside forces? Is it possible, in fact, for the stars themselves to influence and to work upon earthly matter? It is difficult for a modern human to believe that a star, millions of miles distant from the earth, should be able to exercise an influence on it. And yet it is so. The stars do influence earthly events. In a lecture given by Rudolf Steiner to a body of natural scientists, one finds the following important statement. So long as substances are in a solid state, they are subject to the forces of the earth. But as soon as they enter the liquid state, the planetary forces come into play. This means that the solid unalloyed iron, or any iron salt, is subject only to earth forces. But dissolve it in water, and in solution it is subject not only to the forces of earth, but also to the planetary forces of Mars, to whom we owe the origin of iron on our earth. Unalloyed silver, or any silver salt in its solid state, is subject to earth forces, but when dissolved in water, it is the moon that is working in the solution. For it is to the influence of the moon in a remote past that we owe the origin of silver. Unalloyed lead, or any lead salt in its solid state, is subject to earth forces only, but when dissolved in water, it comes under the influence of Saturn, according to the statements of Dr. Steiner. We shall now proceed to describe a series of experiments which, up to a point, anyone can verify for themselves. Why am I compelled to say up to a point? Will become apparent in the course of the essay. The preparations for the experiment are exceedingly simple. Except for the substances, only filter paper and a certain kind of glass cup are necessary. We employed for our experiments 3 solutions of mineral salts: sulfate of iron, nitrate of silver, and nitrate of lead. We obtained the solutions by dissolving 1 gram of pure salt in 100 cubic centimeters of distilled water, which then showed the following qualities. The clear green crystals of sulfate of iron dissolve quickly. The water gradually becomes cloudy, is tinged with a light yellow, and after some time a yellow sediment is deposited. According to Dr. Steiner's statement, we should have in this solution the influence of Mars, as well as that of the Earth. Secondly, we dissolve nitrate of silver in the same way. The fine white crystals dissolve in the distilled water with the rapidity of lightning. We might say the water devours them greedily. Outwardly, we cannot recognize the silver solution, as the water remains colorless, but this liquid is stated by Dr. Steiner to be under the special influence of the moon. Thirdly, we dissolve nitrate of lead in the same way. The lead does not dissolve as quickly as iron and silver. The lead crystals have a milky appearance. They are not transparent and are heavier than the crystals mentioned above. The solution remains quite clear. We cannot find any visible difference between the mere water and the solution of lead. In this liquid, Saturn should be manifesting. We now pour the respective solutions of iron, silver, and lead into the different cups and into them we dip the filter paper. The liquid is gradually absorbed by the filter paper and after some time reaches the maximum height, where it begins to form what we will term a picture. Such pictures show a great variety of forms, and a discussion of the formative forces hidden in the salts of silver must be reserved for another essay. Plate 1 shows the photographic reproduction of a picture obtained from the silver in solution. Below that is shown a corresponding picture of the iron in solution. The sulfate of iron shows only a narrow strip of brownish yellow edged with fine wavy lines. It is unable to develop as many forms as shown in the silver solution. Of the nitrate of lead, we have no picture, for there is only a fine white salt line visible at the edge. Lead by itself produces no picture. We will now go a step further and add to the silver solution the iron solution in equal parts. In a few moments, a dark gray sediment appears, and into this mixture of silver and iron solution we dip again a filter paper. A wonderful picture rapidly arises. See Plate 2. Is it possible that out of the two pictures seen in Plate 1 we get this wealth of form? Forces of which one never dreamt are revealed in the union of iron and silver. A continuous growth is shown in the picture, which can naturally be realized much more vividly if one is able to follow the experiment from beginning to end. The liquid is absorbed by the filter paper, and after 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour, the first black arrow appears, to be followed by a second, a third, a fourth, and so it proceeds. The process unfolds itself before us in a marvelous manner, and we see the results of the combination of iron and silver, or, expressed in another way, the effects of the united influences of the Moon and Mars. Hundreds of pictures were made in this way. Unfortunately, they do not last. The silver blackens, and after some weeks, the picture fades. It is necessary, therefore, to take photographs immediately the experiment has been completed. One never gets tired of repeating these experiments, for the result is never the same. And why? From a chemical point of view, nothing is altered in either the silver or the iron solution. The substances remain the same. The filter paper is also the same. Yet we must find a way by which we can explain this great variety of forms. For instance, an all-important fact lies in the difference produced by an experiment that is undertaken by day to one that is carried out at night. Let us take an iron and silver solution as mentioned above and make our experiment at 11 a.m. A sunny day should be chosen and a glass placed near the window to have the benefit of the full daylight without actually being in the sun. See Plate 3. This picture gives us a harmonious impression. There are few arrows to be seen. The colors are delicate, changing from blue-gray to brownish yellow, turning finally into a shimmering red. This describes the type of picture obtained if the experiment is made in daylight, about midday. With an increasing light, the forms decrease, and possibly no arrow forms will appear at all. Beginning the experiment at 11 a.m., it should be completed by 3 p.m. Now, let us repeat the same experiment at night. At 11 p.m., we will place a similar glass containing the same equal quantities of silver and iron in solution in the same place. It is a fine, clear night in spring. The forming process goes on with a far greater rapidity than by day. By 3 a.m., the whole of the liquid is absorbed by the paper. The picture is finished. See Plate 4. An enormous difference is to be seen in the two pictures. One would like to say, it is merely a coincidence. It is too extraordinary to be true. But what possibilities open up before us if night and day produce results so varied? We repeated these experiments very often and always with the same result. At night, the process is accelerated and the forms created are of greater variety. One objection may be here brought forward. What is there peculiar about the night? Is not the difference between day and night the same as between light and darkness? And if so, why not make the experiment by day in a darkened room? We will answer the question by means of an experiment. At 11 a.m., we have simultaneously one experiment going on in full daylight and another being carried out in a dark room. though the sun is shining outside. See Plate 5. From 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., the experiment is carried out, and what do we find? Compare Plate 3 and Plate 5. And we must acknowledge that many forms have appeared in the darkness, which are not to be found in the light. But compare the picture obtained by day in the darkness, Plate 5, with the picture obtained by night at the window, Plate 4, and we discover that the forming powers of night are still greater than those that worked in the dark room by day. Now, it is necessary to repeat the experiment also by night in the dark room. The darkness is still the same. Therefore, if only the darkness is working, the night picture in the dark room must be identical with the day picture obtained in the dark room. We look back again on Plate 4. The experiment was carried out at 11 p.m. near the window. At the same time, we make an experiment in the dark room. See Plate 6. The picture obtained by night in the dark room shows a greater wealth of forms than the picture obtained by day in the dark room. We can therefore no longer say that it is only the activity of light and darkness and not the activity of day and night. Of course, light and darkness have an influence too. They belong to the phenomena of day and night, but they are not the only causes of the difference in the forms produced by day and night. All that happens in the cosmos during those two periods must be taken into consideration. We come now to the third substance, lead, which by itself does not produce any picture. For a long time, we tried to find a means whereby lead too could manifest formative forces in a characteristic manner, and in the mixture of lead, iron, and silver, we at last succeeded. We will therefore make the same experiment with lead added to the other two solutions. Let us mix equal parts of nitrate of silver, nitrate of lead, and sulfate of iron in the proportion of 1 gram to 100 cubic centimeters of distilled water. Dip in the filter paper and put the glass containing the solutions in the same place near the window at 11 a.m., leaving it there until 3 p.m. See Plate 7. The picture is very dark. We notice only a few arrow-like forms, and the forms are not the same as those produced by the combination of silver and iron, but we shall see them more distinctly later on. The next experiment consists in placing the mixture of silver, iron, and lead in the same place near the window between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. See Plate 8. There again we see the night has greater formative power. Compare Plate 8 with Plate 4, showing the corresponding experiment with silver and iron only. In the dark room by day, silver, iron, and lead give us a distinct picture of the workings of lead. The arrow-like forms, which are produced by the combination of silver and iron, are always sharply defined. One would like to describe them as flying through the air. Then the lead begins visibly to work and gives weight to the arrows. They no longer fly, but give us rather the impression of falling. They are urged towards the earth. I cannot here do otherwise than explain one picture through the medium of another. Under the influence of the lead, the sharp edges disappear. The forms now appear ragged and broken. In the one instance, the mixture of silver and iron, one has the impression of a fresh, youthful face. Directly the lead is added, the face becomes old, wrinkled, and careworn. I do not wish to be misunderstood and hear someone say that he expects to see on the one side the picture of a young face and on the other that of an old man. Naturally, that would be nonsense, but looking at the pictures intently, one can get some such impression as I have tried to put before you. And last of all, we put silver, iron, and lead in the dark room from 11 p.m. till 3 a.m. See Plate 10. In this picture, we cannot help getting the impression of heaviness. How massive, how gigantically plastic the forms look. Thus we get the most powerful forms in the dark room during the nighttime. The pictures one obtains by these solutions are again most varied in their forms. We possess a wealth of material, but are compelled to make only a small choice of reproductions here to illustrate the effects. Up till now, however, there is still one thing we have been unable to demonstrate. That is, that the stars are working in the formative forces. How is it possible to prove that there is the influence of the moon in the silver salt, of Mars in the iron salt, and of Saturn in the lead salt? By means of an experiment I am about to describe, we shall see unfolded before ourselves the influence of the planets. On the 21st November, 1926, there were some very interesting planetary alignments. Something important was happening amongst the stars. At noon, there was an upper conjunction of Sun and Venus. At 6 o'clock in the evening, a conjunction of Sun and Saturn. Sun and Saturn were going to be in conjunction. What was more natural than that we should prepare to make several experiments with silver, iron, and lead during the time in question? For months, we had studied the actions of these substances in cooperation during the day and during the night. According to the statements of Dr. Steiner, in a solution of lead, the powers of Saturn should manifest themselves. Now in the heavens, at the time given, something particular is happening with Saturn. If in reality this planet, so far away from Earth, is in some connection with the lead on Earth, then surely the lead solution must be influenced by other forces at the time the Sun is standing before Saturn, than when this is not the case. Here was an experiment that could make our hearts beat quicker. Would it be possible to penetrate into the secrets of the cosmos, or not? On the 21st November, 1926, at 6 p.m., we dipped the filter paper into a solution of silver, iron, and lead. At this season of the year, it is quite dark at 6 o'clock in the evening. It seemed likely, therefore, that we should have a picture similar to that shown on plate 8. To our great astonishment, a long time elapsed and nothing appeared on the paper. In normal circumstances, the first forms appear in 10 or 15 minutes. In this case, more than a whole hour elapsed before the first forms made their appearance. At 11 p.m., the picture was finished. See plate 11. Where are all the forms? Where is the lead? A remarkable result indeed, and I must confess that I felt somewhat disconcerted at it, the more so as I had expected, when undertaking the experiment, that if Sun and Saturn were in conjunction, then some particular force would be communicated to the lead, and the picture would be more powerful than ever. But I found the contrary to be the case. It seemed as if the lead could not act at all. My abstract idea was corrected by reality. The experiment was repeated at 12 p.m. midnight in the dark room. We knew that here the formative forces acted more intensely. 2 hours later, we looked to see what had happened. Again, we were astonished at what we found. The picture was so remarkable, such a riddle, that we determined to make yet another experiment at 2 a.m. Plate 12 represents the picture obtained from the experiment carried out from midnight until 4 a.m. Every possible defect in the carrying out of the experiment was guarded against. The arrangements were such that under normal circumstances, a picture similar to plate 10 was to be expected. Yet what did we see? Instead of heavy massive forms, an utter blank. An invisible hand had blotted out the workings of the lead in my solution. And whose was the invisible hand? It was the Sun. The Sun had stood before the planet Saturn, and here below, on the Earth, the lead could not manifest its activity. When the stars speak, humans must stand still in silent awe. Plate 13 represents the picture obtained from the combination of silver, iron, and lead in solution from 2 a.m. until 7 a.m. on the same morning. Slowly, very slowly and delicately are the forms returning. One can feel the Sun has ceased to cover entirely the planet Saturn, but even this picture has no resemblance with our usual forms. After the Sun-Saturn conjunction, on November 22nd at 11 a.m., we again made an experiment with the silver, iron, and lead in the darkroom and obtained the picture you see on plate 14. That evening, November 22nd, at 11 p.m., we again made an experiment with the silver, iron, and lead in the darkroom and obtained the picture you see on plate 15. The conjunction of Sun and Saturn was over. Normal conditions had returned, and day and night gave us again the customary, well-known, beautiful forms. The stars have spoken and shown us the bridge that spans the gulf from earth to heaven, from the material to the spiritual, to the matter that is penetrated with spirit. If only people would comprehend the words of Rudolf Steiner in their true meaning, looking upon them as stepping stones on the road from Earth to the cosmos, humanity would then be able to fulfill the mission ascribed to it by the guiding spirit of the time.
Thank you.